What's up? What's up? What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the Grief Bully Podcast. I am your host, Jay Nicole. Guys, we are back in the building, rocking and rolling for another episode. And guys, let me tell you, this one is going to be a special conversation. I've got such a gem, such a light in this world. Man, I'm talking about like bigger than life energy. We spent about 5 days together out in Arizona, and I'm like, we absolutely have to stay connected. Man, I got Crystal Dorm in the building. What up?
Hey.
How you feeling today?
Listen, I'm here.
You're here?
I'm here today. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm breathing.
Hey, listen, that's a beautiful thing. And when we connected, we're like, listen, when you come to Jersey, we're going to make sure that we have this conversation. And now we're here doing it. The thing about the Grief Bully Podcast, I launched this back in 2019, actually, August of 2019. And what it really came from was finding that in our communities of color especially, grief, loss, pain, suffering, all those things, I don't feel like it's always been shared and effectively communicated. Mm-hmm. I actually never really saw people what I would consider grieving healthy, and I don't even remember hearing the word grief. But I knew I was experiencing something when I lost one of my friends back in 2013. Then I lost my grandmother in 16 and my dad in 19.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Like you said, I'm here. I'm
Yes.
alive. I'm breathing. And so from there, I'm like, I can't be the only person that's going through this and experiencing it. So I want to create a platform where we can have these conversations and we can talk about it. The one important thing that I always like to make sure that I communicate is that grief itself means deep sorrow. So it's not just about death.
Yes.
So because death sometimes is like, whoa, are we gonna go there, right? And so I make sure that we understand that because we deal with so much loss in life. That can be a loss of a job, it could be an injury, it could be a divorce, and so many different things that actually happen. One of the things about you when we met last year, actually, wow, I can't believe that much time has passed, was just you've been through so much. And you're truly the definition of, I do not look like what I've been through. I mean, you were just radiating this joy and this energy and just like firing us up. And then when you told me your story, I'm like, whoa, you've been through all that.
Right.
You don't look like that. And so one of the things too is that when we'll get to this, of course, you are all things nonprofit, the nonprofit university, helping people help people.
Yes.
I pay attention. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. And so I get it for sure. But I feel like a lot of the things that we do in life, when it comes to being solution-driven people, we take our pain, we take our experiences, we package it up when you're people kind of like ourselves, and then you do something to give back to others. So, your life, young Crystal, how do we get from there to where we are now?
Whew, wow. That's a lot right there, right? How do I get to there from where I am now? Well, if many don't know, I was sexual abused as a child, which led to other sexual abuse as an adult. I was kidnapped, I was raped, I was physically, mentally, spiritually abused. So even homeless, you check that off the list, right? Homeless.
Yeah.
So I went through a lot. I was an alcoholic by the time I was 28 years old. And so when I look at where I am now, I can only say it was just for the glory of God. It was also me making a decision, right? Because I believe a lot of times we want to jump from here to there, but you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision to get off of wherever you're going, whatever you're doing. That wagon can't go but so long if you stop it. And so I decided to make a decision to change. And with the help of God, I was able to change that. And so I turned my pain into purpose. I started my nonprofit organization, helping age-out foster youth to become self-sufficient in 2015. And now I help others help others.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, too, I forgot to say is just you being open and willing to share your story, because, again, at that point, we were strangers and going through it. And I'm not going to lie, I forgot some of the things you said. So just now, so when you said kidnapped, I was like, kidnapped? What? It's not like a Netflix series.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe we speaking that into existence about your life. But let's kind of just backpedal. So since you opened up the door for a lot of the different things that you've been through. And then immediately you went to God as your refuge. So in those moments, sexual abuse, being kidnapped, being homeless, being an alcoholic, all of those things, were you ever angry at God?
Oh, yeah. I was angry because I felt like, how could I go through so much? Like, give some of this when I'm going through to somebody else, right? And
good.
A lot of times when we go through things, we think it's just us, but not knowing it's so many other women have my story as well. May not be the same story, but they still have my story. And so, but yeah, I used to always say to God, like, why is you letting all this happen to me? It just doesn't make sense. It seems like if I'm in a group of women and somebody say I'm an alcoholic, they'll go my hand. If somebody say I was raped, they'll go my hand. If somebody say I was physically abused, they'll go my hand. So I'm like, why my hand is going up all the time? So I didn't understand it. So yes, I don't want to say angry. I just didn't understand why God was allowing me to go through that. And I remember, and I think my daughter had just graduated high school. I was taking her to college. We were moving to North Carolina, and I ended up going to a conference. And at this conference, I still was just like, this doesn't make sense. I'm going through my second divorce. I mean, probably my third divorce. And it was just, my second divorce. And so I was just going through a lot. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. And I go to this conference and the preacher gets up and she started talking about, some of you think it doesn't make sense by why you went through so much. And I'm like, who told her that? I'm looking like, how is she even saying this? And she began to break it down. And she said, the reason why you went through it, because God knew he can trust you to help others. I didn't understand it. I had no idea. And when I tell you, I cried. But that brought peace to me that I went through so that I can help others, not knowing what that was going to look like.
Wow. That's a lot. And I think the reason why I wanted you to elaborate on that and to talk about it is because we go through so much suffering in life. And a lot of times people, I hear them say, it's like you start to feel like you're really alone in your struggle. And that no one else has this, and just that unfair part of it, like, why me? Why is this? And then I'm sure you start to look at your own choices and think, why am I making these choices? Yes. So did you ever feel like responsible for some of the suffering that was happening?
I mean, even when I was a child, I felt it was my fault. I felt like I should have said something. Why, and I get older and still don't say anything. It's too late to say anything. If you say something now, you're going to look stupid. You're going to look dumb. And so for years, I just always says to myself, why couldn't I speak up? And so that became a pattern of my life, even when it became domestic violence. Why am I not sharing with somebody? Why I'm not telling somebody what's going on, And it all started from when I was a child. I was solid in it. And so, yes, I did look at it. Even when I was raped, I was like, well, I went into that house. I got into that car. I was lured there. I made those choices, right? But still, just because you make those choices, it's not your responsibility because they did what they did. They had evil intent the whole time, but it took me years to understand that there are some things I did put my situation in. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But still that person's responsible for their actions that they did on me. They took advantage of me.
No, very true. Mm-hmm. And I think too, the other thing is you are making, not just you yourself, but in general, we're making a lot of our choices just based on what we're equipped with.
Yeah.
So even though, yes, you did go into this house or you did do this, but you're making your choices and your framework based on how things started off for you in your life. So it absolutely makes sense there. I think one of the biggest things that people have a hard time with also, and I want to know if you have experienced this, is forgiving yourself. So you talked about how long it got you to get to this point, but what does that look like to forgive yourself?
Forgive me. I started forgiving people, I think in my 30s when I really started remembering a whole lot of things. I started processing forgiveness because I realized, I heard from T.D. Jakes that forgiveness is for you and not for the other. Mm-hmm. And so it really played a part in my life to say, yes, I got to forgive because I got to let this stuff go. I got to get this up off of me. It was holding me back, right? And so it took me a couple of years to forgive myself. I didn't understand that part that I needed to forgive myself. I say probably in the 2000s when I finally was like, oh, let me let me go. let me forgive me for making those bad choices. Let me forgive me for saying yes or not answering or not following directions or not, you know how you feel that gut feeling, don't go, don't do. Let me forgive myself. And when I forgave myself, that really gave me a relief of healing, you know, a whole nother process of healing. I was like, wow, I was just like, it was such a weight because I didn't know I wasn't forgiving myself. I was forgiving everybody else, but I wasn't forgiving that little girl who didn't say something when something was happening.
Yeah, no, that's definitely powerful. I mean, I think on the same token, did you have to ask for forgiveness from any people in your life?
Yes, I actually did. I asked my mom. I remember God shared with me that I had judged my mom. You know, because a lot of times
I'm kind of nervous for you gonna go with this, but go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Sometimes you know, we judge our parents. Well, I'm just gonna say me. You know, if you have a parent who maybe their spouse molested you, and maybe they knew and maybe they didn't know, right? But I have to go with what she said. She said she didn't know. And I remember going home and us having that conversation. And I had said, Mom, you know, I forgive you because I judged you. Were you an adult
at this point?
I was an adult.
Okay. Just
you know, and God had to bring that to my attention because I was loving my mom, but I was treating her with that anger, you know, that still like you had something, you know. And I just had to have that conversation with her. And when I had that conversation, she's like, I didn't know. And I had to receive that. She didn't know. And so I said, well, forgive me because I judged you for years thinking that you had to know. How could a mom not know? And so she forgave me. I forgave her and we moved forward. And even at my nonprofit event, if I'm standing there and I'm talking about what happened to my past, my mom is standing right there because it's my story, you know, and she understands that that's my story. If I say that that's what happened, she doesn't say it didn't. She said, that's my story. If that's what I'm saying happened, it happened.
Yeah, I mean, we would need days, months to really break everything down that you said. And I know there's somebody listening. I don't know. It could be a man, a woman. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that perceived indifference is really important because it's just like people who were raised by the same people in the same household, but everybody has a different experience.
Yes.
And so I really appreciate you sharing that. And then there's also a lot of times where we become more so like a victim mentality in the sense that, yes, in a lot of our things, we were absolutely victims. But the problem is, and I've experienced this, is where in the midst of my story, there are other people who are being impacted by my behaviors and my choices in a negative way. So it's like you're kind of in this catch-22 where it's like, this is happening to me and like these are bad things. And then, but because of that, if you are alcohol was a thing for me and different stuff like that, people are experiencing this part of your personality. So as much as you want to, you want to be forgiven, you also, you want to extend forgiveness to people, you also have to ask for it, you know, as well in our situation. And
I think about my principal, you know, I gave him all kinds of HELL because I was an angry little girl and I didn't know how to speak it. And so I did a lot of things in school I shouldn't have been doing. And I said, if I ever seen, his name is Mr. Sterling, if I ever see him, I would ask him to forgive me. Because I really, really was a bad person because of what was happening to me in my life and not being able to share that. So that would be a person I would like to ask to forgiveness. But I think the same way we want forgiveness and we forgiven others, we should be willing to, if we did somebody wrong, ask them to forgive us.
For sure. So why didn't you lean into the comfort of excuses and allow your life to just stay how it was? Because I feel like a lot of times it's just easier to be like, this is the way my life is. These are my circumstances. Don't expect much from me because this is what it is. Why didn't you just stay in that?
Because I remember when I got pregnant with my son, one of my teachers had told me in high school that I would never be nothing but a pregnant H, you know, or W, whatever, how you spell that word.
I think with the H or W, it's the same. It's going to drive the same point.
Right. And I would just, you know, live off the system and be in the welfare and live in the projects. And so when I got pregnant, I remember saying, I will not be his statistics. I will not be what he said I'm going to be. And I went to school to get my GED. I worked hard. I moved forward. And even though things kept coming at me, I was like, I can't stay here. Even though I started drinking, I drank in the house. I did my drugs in the house. So I was like, I'm going to get out of this. This is not going to destroy me. And I remember one night when I felt like I was falling, all else was failing, like I was going down, that I ran to the church the next day. I always know, my mom raised me in church as a little girl, so I always knew that as a safe place. I learned who God was as a little girl. And so when it got that deep, I was like, let me run here, and get saved. And so throughout my life, it's always been a process of me getting healed. Things coming up, getting healed, things coming up. Like I'm doing a documentary of my life now about being kidnapped. I'm going back to the house where I was kidnapped. I'm going back to the place I was raped. And I'm just filming and talking about my experiences now. Because I'm going through that now, healing to say I'm no longer to be bound by any of this.
Yeah, so it seems like it's a decision. And even though life, once you make that decision, keeps throwing different things at you and you're on this journey, you can get discouraged. But once you make that up, it's like, okay, I can see the finish line.
Yeah.
I know it's there. So like these things are swaying me, but I'm still going to keep going. I think that's so powerful because it's easier. I asked you that because it's easier to just stay in those excuses. But do you ever think that your resiliency, your ability to cope and keep going was ever a weakness or a negative thing because you didn't sit in and allow yourself to like heal in those moments? It's like, look, I just got to keep going. I got to keep going. I
had 2 kids. I had to. I had to keep going. I had a daughter to raise. I had a son to raise. And there was no time to sit down and pity. I had to it was just like move forward. Like I've got to. And then I was around a lot of friends and family members who fell into that and stayed there. And I was like, I can't.
That's powerful.
I can't stay. I can't. I see their lives, but I can't stay. I couldn't even go back and help them. I gotta keep moving right now because if I stop and help them, then I'm liable to fall. So I had to I gotta keep going. I gotta keep moving forward. Yeah. And I could not. Those words that teacher spoke to me rang in my ear like a bell to this day. Like I've got to keep going. I have purpose, I have destiny, and I have to fulfill it.
Wow, the power of the words are so important in both ways.
Yes.
Where the power of him saying that, he probably, if he's alive still at this point or whatever, but living his life, not even realizing that you said this and you spoke this into someone's life, and then from a negative standpoint, but also you taking the power back with your own words and declaring and decreeing over yourself on where your life is going and what the trajectory of it. And I'm glad that you did.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you right now, this world is such a better place because of you and having you in it for sure. And I know, again, being on the Grief Bully podcast, of course, and we talk about different things with loss and such. And I did see, and I knew we were going to come here, but I did see that you unfortunately lost someone that you love close to you recently. And it was interesting because when you sat down and you talked about it, and you're like, oh wait, I'm at the Grief Bully podcast. And so I gotta no, I don't want to get into it. But you did say something, and you were saying that you need to get it out.
Yes.
And that's really important.
I mean, it just dawned on me today. I said to my husband, I said, I'm going to the Grief Bully podcast. And so he was like, what? I said, yes, this is what we're going to talk about. I've never really experienced. Now, my birth father passed away. I knew him, but I didn't know him as a father.
Okay.
Right? So he didn't raise me. He wasn't around me. So I didn't really know him. I know of him. I know his name. I've seen him before, but I didn't have a relationship with him. And so, but when he passed, he passed. They didn't have, he was a Muslim, so they did that sunrise, sunset, and he was gone. So I never really experienced grief. My grandmother passed. We were younger. You're little, you don't understand it. Everything's happening. Grandfather, but for my sister, who is like the only grandchild that has passed since my aunts and them, but only grandchild of my grandmother's kids and my mom's first daughter to pass. We have 6 of us siblings, and she's under me. She would be 60 come November. And so when I first heard it, I was like, of course I'm crying. And I'm still, it's just so, I can't explain it, but I know something happened, like inside of me. Like I feel this heavy, this sadness that just, it just comes over me. Like it's just there, it's just present. Like I just want to reach inside and like go sadness. But I understand people say it takes time. There's a process. There's different things. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like how I feel. It's hard sometimes to get out of bed. Like today I'm like, okay, got to get up. I got things to do, the other day. And I'm eating crazy. I was just on this big healthcare journey.
I saw you working out.
Right, yeah. working out. Now I'm like, now I'm just like stuffing, and I know it. I see it. Mm-hmm. But for some reason in this moment, I can't stop it. And I said to my husband, I said, when we get back home, I'm gonna talk to somebody, because I can't do this. I can't think sometimes. I'm trying to get my ideas together. I want to show up. So when I show up, I got to show up. Like I show up. I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm present. Mm-hmm. But when I'm out of here, it's the silence, the whatever it is. It's just so weird. And I haven't like completely cried. I cried, but I don't know what crying looks like. I don't know what this is. I have no words for this grieving process.
I'm just letting you talk.
I'm trying to find ways to move, I'm trying to find like something to do, something to put here. Like I need something in this spot, because I know I'm not myself. And I've never felt this way. I know I'm not myself. I know it. I feel it. I sense it. I want to just take my body and just do something, like move, like something. I can't explain this. This is the most horrible thing. And I can't imagine what my nieces are feeling. My mom, me and her talk, and she talked about how she feels. And she's like, it's just something you can't explain, And so now I'm just practically like in this moment, and knowing I'm going to have to, I don't want to wait months and years for this. This has to pass. This has to pass. I can't wake up and not want to get out of bed. To me, that's depression. Mm-hmm. I can't be stuffing my mouth full of junk after all the work I did.
It feels good though.
Yeah, right. It does. Those chips and that chocolate feel really good.
In that moment, it feels good.
It does.
It feels good.
It's a substitute. It's almost like, and I thought about it. I said today, wow, I'm not drinking. Because, sometimes we can go back to what makes us feel good. Let me get some wine. Let me go get this drink. Let me go get, and I haven't. But have I picked up another habit? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little safer.
It is a little safer.
Right. I'm gonna say
at least I can get it. Yeah, right.
A little safer. I wanted to let you talk again. I feel like God called me to the Grief Bully podcast. Like grief, it's not something that I enjoy talking about. Right. Let me just make that very clear.
Yeah.
But what I do feel inside of me is to be able to have these conversations and provide an opportunity for someone to just talk. You said so much that when you listen back, like you'll really be able to see kind of like where you are. But that feeling of just yourself, I always say, I missed a part of me that died when you did. It's a real thing, that life as you knew it, who you were, your dreams, your goals, like everything, it's there, but it's like there.
Yeah.
Devin and I actually talked about it briefly too, is that when you lose someone, he lost someone very close to him, his brother, unfortunately, this year. Once you have certain losses, a lot of other things are just like, it really doesn't matter. It's just a thing because we lived with these people and we didn't know how to live without them. And a lot of times I see when someone passes away, people are like, oh, I know we didn't talk every day. Oh, I know. That's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that you have to now learn and figure out how to go every single day knowing that that person isn't somewhere doing their every single day.
Yeah.
And that is really hard and it's really scary. And one of the most important things that you said is that when you get back, you want to go and talk to someone. That's why we have this show. I'm not a therapist. I'm just looking at it as a gap, a bridge to have people say, hey, maybe I do need to go and talk to someone. I would felt like I was going crazy when I lost my grandmother. Like I was like, man, I have so many people around me, but I feel so alone. Like what is going on? Like it was just a really, really crazy experience. So when you're saying all those things, I can totally relate to it. I can feel you. And people who are listening to this show as well are going to. You're not alone. You're not crazy. The expectation that you have for yourself, I get it. You want to move out of this. It is a process. And people say time heals all wounds, but I don't agree with it. I think people who use their time to heal will heal. I also think, though, that there's a pace, right? And that you don't have to force yourself. I mean, this was very recent. The thing I know about you, though, is you're very solution-driven. She's a driver, very solution-driven, right? And what I learned is that how you do life is also how you do loss. So it makes sense that you want to keep going. You want to get out of this. You want to get out of this because, and you will. And I know that you're going to probably end up creating something even more impactful in the world and share another part of you on the end of this. But take your time. Be okay with understanding that complicated loss and loss in a very close proximity is scary and it is hard. It doesn't mean that you'll have a joyless life. It doesn't mean that all of the goals and the things that you want to accomplish won't happen. It just means right now, bro, I'm not trying to do anything but lay in this bed and eat these snacks. And be okay with that.
And that's the fearful part of it, though, is because I'm driven. You know, I got things going on, things coming up, and I have to show up in my best self. So how do I stop for a moment and not and I don't even know if my sister will want me to stop. You know, like, girl, do you. I can see her now, like, girl, please go on, do you, you know.
Yeah.
And because that's her, you know, her nickname was Tickles, you know, so she make you laugh, funny. So she would have been like, girl, bye, I'm gonna go do me, you know. And so I think she will want me to keep moving and keep going. And I just want to do it in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
So if it takes I need to take time, I just don't. And maybe a time where God's like, okay, slow down for a second.
Slow down for a second. Let me tell you this. You can't outrun grief. You can't outrun it. So it don't matter. If you were to keep just going, you will hit some sort of wall. It's just, and this is the thing, and I'm only speaking from experience. I can't tell anybody else's story, but I know the countless people that have sat in that seat where you are right now, and we've all kind of had that same thing. It's something that you just can't escape. Yeah. I wish I could sit here and tell you that, you're just going to feel great one day. I will say that the crisis part of it, the feeling that more so what you're feeling now because it is so recent, that does have the possibility to subside and to ease, but it's going to be with you. It's a deep sorrow, and the mourning process actually is the outward expression of that. And so what you're doing now, talking about it, crying, tears have power. Yeah. When you let that release go and let that happen, it feels so good. It makes me scared sometimes to do it, but what I learned is to trust myself with my emotions through allowing myself to do it. It used to be like, I have to go to work. I got to do this. And I don't have time to be crying. But then when I think about it, I'm like, man, after I cry, I usually feel better. Yes. It's just an uncomfortable thing, but the whole experience is. It's a real thing. I mean, I would beg you, I'm sure your sister, you said, I'm not sure, but based on what you said, she would be like, girl, bye. But she also would be like, hey sis, if you're not feeling it. And then the people who you have obligations and things to do or whatever it is, that's why we have grace
Yes.
And God gives it to us, which is defined as unmerited divine favor.
Mm-hmm.
And you extend grace to people in other seasons because there will come a season in your life, perhaps like now,
Yes.
where you need that same grace.
Yes.
Have you done that where someone's had things they needed to do
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, well, you know what? I know they probably going through something. Like,
Yes.
it's cool. Like, I'm not
Yes.
worrying about it. People have to extend that same
Yeah.
thing to you,
Yeah.
right?
And my team is giving me grace. Like
That's great.
even my
That's beautiful.
students, they're like, I have a team that shows up if I'm not able to show up, and that's what I love about it. Like I'm not building CDE nonprofit university by myself. I have a team who's like, girl, we got you. What you talking
That's
about
beautiful.
tonight? We got you, you know. And so
Mhm.
being able to have someone to support you. My husband is there to support me, you know, to say it. I got people, you know, that are calling me, and so I feel, I know it's going to be all right. I know it's not going to feel like this all the time. It's just a feeling that I just don't like it, and I don't think anybody does. It's just something that's undescribable, and I don't want it. I'm a fighter. I'm a driven. I can't. This can't win. You know, this can't win. And so if going through the process and doing it a healthy way, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna do it a healthy way, and being able to be there so I can be stronger for my mom and my nieces who may need me right now. And I don't feel like I'm strong enough. Like I've been a broke, so I'm kind of standing away, knowing I need to be there. So it's so. What do you say about that? Like, you know, you need to be there, but you know you're not strong enough to be there. How do you be there?
I think a couple of things. I think that's a really important point to bring up. But in your experience, you have to become your own best advocate.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be your own advocate. You have to speak your mind to protect your heart. So I think sometimes we overthink what that is, and the reality of it is saying to those people, I love you all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be there for you with whatever percentages I have to give right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably operating on like 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is to get to 100. But right now I'm not there.
Okay.
And you can ask them, what does support look like?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they say, you can say, and if I can support you in that way, I will. If that means I want to let my niece know I love her, but I just can't talk right now, maybe you just send a text.
Yes.
So you're not physically speaking on the phone. Sometimes I used to just like send people hearts, like, or just thinking of you, things like that. But that is the thing, is that we can't pour from an empty cup.
Got you.
So
Yes.
as much as you want to, you have that desire. The reality is you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you have to take that time. But what happens sometimes is that we retreat and then we become silent.
Yes.
And so sometimes our silence can become offensive to people,
right.
rather than just saying, you know how I normally am, right?
Yes.
You know how I've never been through anything like this before. So I will pray and going to continue to ask God to help me and strengthen me through it. But right now, I just don't have it.
Yes.
And you have to be okay with that. I'm like that too, because I have a lot of codependency issues. So I just really want to make people happy and feel good and be there and make sure everything is good. But there have been seasons in my life where I'm like, this is all I'm operating on right now. Like, this is all I have. When I lost my grandmother, that was a tough conversation that we had to have. It was like, this is all I have to give. And so if this isn't going to be enough, I apologize, but I can't make it more.
This is all I have. Yeah.
That's all I have. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Because you're grieving a loss, the same loss that they are. Everyone's doing it differently. So you don't have to just make this extra power and strength because you feel like I need to be the strong one. I need to do this broke. You can just, this broke this. You know how many times you said, I probably didn't count it, but I don't like this. I don't know what this is. You don't even have words for it.
Right.
So how you can't just make yourself do that? The fact that you get out of bed, you get dressed, you came here, you're out of town, you went to you're still moving. You just have to be able to speak your mind and be honest with that with people.
Yes, I love that you said that you can't give something that you're not full of. Like you can't give from an empty cup, and that's how I feel. However, I can send a text. Yeah. I can let them know that I'm loving them. I'm thinking about them, because as you said before, it can become offensive. Oh, we ain't seen them. They ain't here, because we don't know how to show up right now. And so I thank you for that. You are the grief coach.
No, it's a real thing because especially like if within a family where everyone is dealing with a loss, but everybody's going to deal with it differently. And so sometimes people actually get angry. I've had this conversation with someone, a young man, he was on the show and he talked about how he was angry at people because he didn't like how they were grieving. Like he didn't feel like they were, I don't know if it's like hurt enough or broken enough or just displaying. Because sometimes like if you don't see somebody crying, it's just like if we don't see people posting on social media, we think it didn't really happen.
Right.
So it's like the same thing as like if I don't see you crying, then you must not be that hurt.
Right.
Oh, Crystal, you so sad about your sister. I don't see you falling apart. You don't have to see that because this is the thing. Grief is it doesn't. Not like we have a scarlet letter on us that says, hey, I'm grieving. In some countries, they actually wear all black and they do that, or in the Jewish community. So you know these people are going through it. A lot of times with us, after that funeral and the repast and all that, everybody just kind of goes on their own. But it goes back to the reason why I have this platform is because we don't know. So when we're learning that, to learn to say, okay, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord is something that I always heard. And I have to say, like, as an adult, I'm like, I get that, but I also have to also acknowledge and give room to my human experience and my flesh experience. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I'm sad. Like, whatever those words are, they are real. That doesn't diminish your faith in God. It just means that I now know that I need you more. I was reading a book that was talking about why bad things happen to good people, or when bad things happen to good people. People were losing their children that were young, all these different things, and they couldn't receive anything about God because it's like, no, if there was a God, why did my child pass away? Why did these things happen? Why is there suffering in the world? And it was like, well, actually, the weapon was going to form, but it wouldn't prosper. And that the whole point of it is that then becomes, God becomes, if you're a believer, your refuge and your anchor. So it's just like, I need you now. I need you more. And guys, I can't give you what I don't have. So I just need that space and that's it.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
I'm going to do that.
You're welcome.
You are the group. I'm telling you.
No, you know what? And listen, like, you're a beautiful person. And I thank you for sharing that, sharing your story about your sister and everything that you've been through in your life. And, you know, maybe we'll have the conversation again and just go from that. But I think people will definitely relate. And I just hope that above anything else, you feel better by just talking about it and getting it outside of your body. Yeah, and I do feel better talking about it because I don't talk about it, and I find myself getting angry at what, or this, like, if someone asks us, let's say my daughter asks me, she's like, "What time are you gonna do this? What time are you gonna do that?" And I'm like mad because I know because I'm a time person, like. What time we doing? We rolling, and now hearing this time is like, I have no time for you. I don't know what time I'm going to do anything in this moment, even though I want to do it, and so I have to catch myself and say, right now I don't have time. Like this what I'm going through right now, I can't give you a time. I'll just come out my room, dressed and be ready to go, but I can't give you a time because I felt myself getting upset because I used to have alarms going off 20 times a day. Now I'm like, turn that alarm off and shut it down. And so I feel that because I'm fighting against myself not being able to move the way I know I move. And that's right there is frustrating. I'm a mover and a shaker. I know. I'm showing up. I'm there, but when I can, I'm like I'm fighting against something, and that shuts me down. Yeah, you got to be. You have to. Not you have to. What I would encourage you to do is to just continue to just be curious about your grief and what it's telling you, and be okay with that. It's kind of like you're now on a different voyage of finding out who Crystal is after the loss of her sister, because that's two different people now, and it sucks because we didn't want to change. Right. Like I didn't want to not have that feeling and desire anymore. It's like no, but I just don't feel it, and you can't force that. I believe, and I have total confidence that you and your higher power, your belief, and just who you are, I know that you'll be able to go through it, but you have to be okay with where you are and just being curious about it. Like, okay, when I do this, I feel okay, so maybe I'll do a little more of that. When they're asking me all this stuff about time, and so like, what's the workaround? What can we do differently so y'all don't be asking me that and I don't be getting mad about whatever. It's just, this is one of the like things I'll say. The last thing is, it unfortunately we have to be like come creative in our new normal and making it and just like making things different. Different is scary. Change is scary.
That's very frustrating.
It's very frustrating. And in grief, you become really powerless.
Yeah.
And for a person like myself and what I know about you, when you like to be in control, to have something make you become powerless, you don't even have words for your feelings. That is scary.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. Like, you're not crazy. You lost your sister.
Yeah.
That's hard. It's hard. It's not easy stuff. And if anybody, and this is the thing too, the reason why the communication to other people in your life is really important is because they don't know. They don't know. We can all only have our interpretation of grief based on an experience that we had. Prior to you losing your sister, you just said you never really went through that.
Yeah.
So some of you people on your team or your daughter or your husband, they just may not know. But it's like, how don't you know? Like, why would you think I want to do that? Well, because I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's just more of that communication and figuring out how we can do that effectively. And some days, maybe it's a non-communication day. I am not talking to anybody.
This is heavy.
Yeah.
This is heavy.
Yeah. Breathe through it.
It's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
This is heavy. Because, one situation seems like it changed a lot. I feel like it dug into my personality.
Mm.
This is crazy. Yeah. I'll say this too should pass. But I heard you when you said you have to be in that moment. And you have to allow yourself grace.
Yes.
And so I have to allow myself grace because I keep saying, I got no time for this.
Because that's no time for grief. I don't have no time for this.
I got no time for this.
Yeah.
I don't have time. Like, I feel like when things hit, sometimes it becomes a distraction. And that's with anything. It's not her death. It's just like anything can be a distraction. And how I'm always trying to figure out how I'm gonna do this. Like mapping out how is this going to, what's the outcome of this?
Yeah.
And I can't. I got to stop myself from thinking that I can create this outcome.
Grief is not a problem to be solved. It's an experience to be carried. Can't solve it. That's what makes it so scary. It's like the hardest working person, the wealthiest person, whatever, you can't change it. That is the most difficult part. What we can do is keep working on ourselves because grief will meet us where we are. So if we're not taking care of ourselves mentally or whatever the case, it just compounds. But at the end of the day, realizing that there is not a solution. There's not 5 magic stages that people talk about that you go through and then you just are back at whatever. That's not it. The last stage of grief is acceptance in terms of the 5 stages that people speak about. But the thing about the 5 stages of grief is that they were actually created for someone to cope with their own terminal illness. It wasn't about a human person who's still alive coping and learning to live with the loss of someone that they love dearly. It wasn't for that. So one thing I do agree with when it comes to the acceptance part, and I just talked about this recently, I was speaking somewhere, is that what I learned to accept is that my life as I knew it would never be the same.
What does that mean?
So I haven't been able to really accept any of the losses that I've had. The people who have died, there's days where I'm still like, that it's not possible that happened. Years, I'm talking 7 years, 6 years, 10 years, and I'm just like, what? But once I accepted that, prior to the phone calls, because it was always a phone call.
Yes.
Prior to that phone call, when that doctor said to me, your father passed away. When my friend called me and said, they found Mo unresponsive, she died. Mm-hmm. Each part takes a part of me. I can't get that back because I can't get them back. So how knowing that they were alive made me feel, and how I was okay, I was more whole, I was another block off of me. It's just different. So knowing that things are different is so freeing. And if you can get to a point where you can accept that, I think you get a starting point to start creating a new normal. But until we keep wanting life to be how it was before this, we're just going to keep banging our heads against the wall. Like, all the way you felt and the energy you felt and how you were with all your life goals prior to your sister passing, that person is just not there. Does not mean that you won't have a joyous life. Doesn't mean that you won't have a prosperous life. It just means that whoever you just said, you're not yourself. So now it's about, well, who am I now?
Yeah.
And what parts of me are going to still be there, and how it will be. Like, again, I'm here to tell you firsthand, like, I was devastated and just incomplete. I don't know how this is going to go forward, especially when I lost my grandmother. I felt like, honest to God, I felt like I just lost my, like, everything. And I'm here, and you see that. Yes. And so you can't feel it. Just let it know that, like, okay, all right, so things are going to be different now. I don't know who I am now. Maybe I'll figure it out. Maybe I won't. I don't really know, and be okay with that.
Wow. We need to talk.
Yeah. We are talking.
I talk to you more every day.
Listen. I'm here for you. I'm in your corner. And again, there's a reason why we connected, and I'm happy to be able to be here for you in this time. And I'm always definitely going to be there. I don't want us to lose the opportunity before we roll out of here for you to just talk about. Guys, now she has a lot going on. We already talked about that, and I do want you to talk about it because, again, those things are still moving. Although you're not shooting at your best self right now. You have a team in place and you have opportunities for people. So just take a second and just talk about what you have going on, or where people can follow you, connect with you, and all that.
Yes, guys, listen, and I wanted to share with you is that I just did a young lady, her daughter died, and she is doing her nonprofit. We just did her nonprofit. But while we were on the phone, I haven't experienced this grief yet. This happened a couple weeks ago, and I'm crying with her, because I'm feeling her pain. And so just recently we just talked, and I'm like, wow, it may be different as a mother or daughter. I don't know, but I'm like, oh my God. And when she said, I'm so sorry for your loss, and just to know that she's taken her pain and turned it into purpose, starting her nonprofit for her daughter. And so I just believe that this is a painful experience, and who knows what God is going to have me to do with this. Maybe I can, I don't know, but I know that things don't just happen. That God always have a plan in mind. And so, of course, the enemy tries to make you feel, depressed and stay in that state. But if I continue to trust in God, knowing that this happened, this was a purpose, what does this purpose mean to me now in my life and me moving forward? How can I move my sister forward with me? Right?
Powerful.
How can I take her and say, or help, or whatever she did, or whatever she was trying to do? How can I take a part of her life with me? And not just leave it, And so I'm just sitting here listening, and I'm like, God doesn't make mistakes. He didn't take me through all of that I've been through to leave me here. Okay, start preaching. He did not take me all that I've been.
You've been preaching
to bring me here. And so when I started my nonprofit organization, as I said, I help others. And so you can find me as Mr. and Mrs. Durham. You'll see me and my husband dancing. And
they definitely be dancing.
Going viral. But we help entrepreneurs to understand that their sole purpose is to give back, right? God has given us power to gain wealth to establish his covenant here on the earth. And so we as entrepreneurs, and God give us this power, he wants us to go back and help others. And so that is what we do. We help you as a business owner, an influencer who's already wants to give back to the community, but we help you to protect your income in the process, right? So that's a whole another story.
Yeah.
But we are there to help you go back and make that social responsibility and help somebody else. And so you can find me on all platforms, Mr. and Mrs. Durham. I am the go-to for all things nonprofit. We have Nonprofit University. And so if you come in and you just say, hey, I have a nonprofit, but I want to learn, we literally have a university that takes you step by step and show you how to build a sustainable, successful nonprofit organization.
So that's definitely a mic drop, and definitely make sure you go check out the dancing and all those good things like that, and just leaning into it. And I'm super proud of you for allowing yourself to lean in and just, you know, having an outpour and that moment to just share your experiences and where you are. And this is definitely not the last time. It's only the first time that we had the opportunity to do this. We're going to keep, my thing is, it's all about grieving and growing. And so we did a little grieving, we did a little growing, and we going to keep going, and I'm going to keep no, I'm just kidding. My mixtape is coming out. No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys. Listen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Gratefully Podcast. You already know where I hang out the most, and if you don't, what the heck are you doing? Make sure you go follow me over there on Instagram at I_am_J Nicole, guys. So next time, you already know. Love and light. Peace.